the SRY test is chosen not as a be all and end all test. It is a screening test. Now, whenever you have a screening test, it means that you have a simple test which can be applied to a big range of people. And from there, you can identify who you can narrow down on whom further testing is required. So this test is not physically intrusive. It is not invasive. So just like you would go and give a blood sample for getting your blood panel done, or you would just give your saliva for testing of some genetic testing that you need to get done. So it is not at all intrusive in the sense it is not physically intrusive. So this gene is identified, either a blood sample is taken or a cheek swab sample is taken, then the DNA is separated, and from that is where they identify whether the whole chromosome set, whether the Y chromosome has the SRY or does not have the SRY. So the SRY that we are talking about is just a gene on the Y chromosome of a male child or anybody who is undergoing a male puberty and will produce male hormones.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khyati Vakharia, for sparing the time for what I think is a very important discussion. Most of us are a little afraid of discussing a very sensitive subject, and we are talking about the SRY gene test that the Athletics Federation of India is introducing in India, that the World Athletics has already implemented in the World Athletic Championship Tokyo in 2025, and the International Olympic Committee has said that it will enforce from the Los Angeles Olympic Games. But to my mind, it's a very important subject. And to my mind, a lot of us are hesitant because we don't try and understand the complexities involved. Thank you for trying to help us out to understand the complexities and to make it simple for us. Thank you so much, Khyati.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here and look forward to a good conversation.
Let me start by asking you a simple question. What is this SRY gene test?
First thing is, whenever there is a male child in the womb, so there is a SRY, which is a sex determining area on the Y chromosome, which makes that baby a male. So when that SRY is present on the Y chromosome of that baby, that is where the male development, male hormones, everything start developing right from there. So the SRY that we are talking about is just a gene on the Y chromosome of a male child or anybody who is undergoing a male puberty and will produce male hormones.
Right. Thank you so much for that. How does one then test whether one is SRY positive or negative? Can you just explain the process of the test that's going to happen?
So SRY gene can be identified on a genetic test. So this gene is identified, either a blood sample is taken or a cheek swab sample is taken, then the DNA is separated, and from that is where they identify whether the whole chromosome set, whether the Y chromosome has the SRY or does not have the SRY.
So when you say cheek swab, Dr. Vakharia, you're talking about the saliva that is taken in from the cheek, from inside the mouth, isn't it? Or is it an external test that we're talking about?
No, it is the cheek swab which is taken from the inside of your mouth. So either that can be taken or a blood sample can be taken.
Right. And there is always this concern about sex determining tests being invasive, especially given the controversies over the last 10, 12 years. We've had a Dutee Chand case, we've had a Caster Semenya case going all the way up to CAS and to the Swiss federal court as well. Now, is this an invasive test, or how quickly is the test conducted? What does it entail for the athlete?
So this test is not physically intrusive. It is not invasive. So just like you would go and give a blood sample for getting your blood panel done, or you would just give your saliva for testing of some genetic testing that you need to get done. So it is not at all intrusive in the sense it is not physically intrusive in nature. But yes, there is a way to do it. Confidentiality has to be maintained. Medical ethics need to be at par. So those things need to be taken care of. The media cannot be, getting involved into this and making comments on these kind of tests. So that is something that needs to be taken care of.
So what you're saying is what the IOC and what World Athletics has said, that the athlete's privacy will be maintained while it is a non-invasive test. The privacy also will be maintained, and anybody who tests positive for the SRY gene, who identifies himself or herself as female and tests positive, his or her identity will not be revealed to the public.
Yes. So World Athletics and IOC has made sure that athlete privacy is on their priority. It is the first thing on their list. The second thing is to make sure that even the medical records, even the test records that come out, is only and only seen by the medical professional. It is not to be shared anywhere else. It is highly confidential, and this is only through medical professionals that these reports can be shared. So that is the kind of privacy and confidentiality that World Athletics maintains and IOC maintains. And it is very important because here we are dealing with elite athletes who are public figures, basically. So even one, leak out in the media or anything of that sort can cause harm to their own brand value. So I think it is very important that we maintain that kind of privacy and confidentiality.
Khyati, I get that, but let's go back to SRY gene testing. Do you think, in your own view, I'm sure you've studied a lot of it in the last couple of years because it has come into the news. Do you think that this is one of the safest tests? Because I've read reports back in the 90s that SRY test was not the most accurate test. But now I also read reports about how if somebody tests positive, there's a 99% chance that that person is male. But if someone tests negative, 99% chance that that person is female. Do you think this is the most accurate test available to mankind at this point of time to ensure that the female category is protected?
So one thing to understand here is that the SRY test is chosen not as a be all and end all test. It is a screening test. Now, whenever you have a screening test, it means that you have a simple test which can be applied to a big range of people. And from there, you can identify who you can narrow down on whom further testing is required. So just because I am going to test positive for an SRY gene test does not mean that I'm just out then and there. So the biology is more complex than it seems, and just making certain assumptions or disqualifying somebody on a single gene test is not right. So this screening tool is being set out to screen and then narrow down those athletes where you need further testing. So to put out the diagnosis, and then you can decide whether then they are eligible to play or not.
Right. So, from what I understand of what you've just told me, Khyati, it is important for athletes to understand that this test is only an indicator. It is not the final result, but it's an indicator of where the tests are going to lead, what kind of direction it is going to go. So then the athlete has a choice of deciding whether to continue with the testing and want to remain in the female category and continue with the testing, or maybe make whatever suggestions that doctors might give, whatever the medical protocol is, or accept the fact that you are more likely to be a male, therefore you move away from the sporting competition. Is that, have I understood that right? That this is only an indicator, that the SRY test is an indicator, it is not the final outcome.
Yes, yes. So the SRY gene test is a tool, it is a screening tool where we narrow down, and supposing some athlete comes out to be SRY positive,
Now,
means that they have undergone a male puberty. They may have hormones which are androgenic, which are like the testosterone levels will be high. Now, whether the athlete is able to use that testosterone to an advantage is what is then done with other lab tests and laying down the diagnosis.
Is India equipped to do these kind of tests, Dr. Vakharia?
Yes.
Because we sometimes think that our science is not so advanced, and maybe we don't have the lab that can do this kind of testing to the satisfaction of the athlete and to their families. Do we have that facility in India?
It will be to your surprise that all around the world, we are one of those countries where it is most accessible. It is easiest to get. There are certain countries where it is not even legal to do these tests. So we as a country, our science, our medical science is right up there where everything can be done, diagnosis can be put out, and we have all kinds of facility to test, and you go right up to the athlete satisfaction.
It might come across as a rather silly question, but how expensive is this test for the athlete? Especially, I'm thinking about athletes coming from rural background, from underprivileged classes, because especially in track and field sport, a lot of athletes come from such background. How expensive is it going to be for them?
So this test can cost anywhere between 5,000 to 12,000 rupees. And which, by the way, when you compare the world standards, it is very cheap in India. And just to get this one test done elsewhere in any other country is way more expensive.
Right.
So we're lucky to have this at access and at prices which are relatively lower than the global standards. But yes, we have athletes who come from rural backgrounds. We have athletes who are not that well to do. So yes, this can hit the pocket a bit for athletes coming from that background.
From what I gather, the government of India is going to be funding most of the testing as well, especially in the field of athletics. It'll be interesting to see how this pans out. But Khyati Vakharia, I want to ask you, why has this become important in the world of sport? Why did World Athletic get it in the first place? And why is IOC now backing the SRY test? What is this about the male and female category, that this test has become a very important tool in the hands of those wanting to protect the female category in sport?
What makes it simple is that you have to get this test done just once in your entire lifetime to be eligible to participate in the female category. Now, this is done by World Athletics, this is done by IOC to protect the female category. So, as World Athletics President Sebastian Coe, how he would put it, as that this is to prevent any biological glass ceiling. So that, like, he says it like this in terms of the physiology of performance, that for the biological females, there seems to be like an invisible barrier where their advancement and them winning medals or getting scholarships may become very difficult, because there are athletes who have the advantage of male puberty coming into this and blocking things for the biological females.
Very interestingly, when I was in Tokyo for the World Athletic Championship, Dr. Vakharia, I read a report in a newspaper coming out of Britain where they spoke about uh, quite a few DSD athletes who won medals in the World Championships, and how they will probably become ineligible now because uh, they are not female athletes as such. Uh, Sport has a history and a deep history of such issues. Hopefully, science will help us find that right solution. It might seem inhuman to many. The human rights activists speak up against such tests, but because it is non-invasive, because the privacy is protected, I'm sure that they will see reason into why sports officials are having just a female category and a male category. There has been suggestions that they want a third category for such athletes to be competing at the world level, but I'm not too sure about the number of athletes who will qualify for the World Championship in a third category of sex beside the male and female. But it's very, very interesting to know how many of these athletes have actually picked up medals in the World Championship. And when I hear human rights activists speak about one athlete who has been denied the opportunity to compete with females, or a few athletes who are denied the opportunity to compete with females. I'm also thinking about the 7 or 8 other athletes who are competing with that athlete in the final, who have competed before with that athlete in the final. What about their human rights? I sometimes wonder. But to my mind, it's a very complex issue. There are no simple solutions. But I think between World Athletics and IOC, they have come to the right conclusion at this point of time. But only time will tell us whether this is right or wrong. What are your parting thoughts on this, Dr. Vakharia?
So I feel like the female category, protection of the female category is so important. And as you rightly said, that there was a report where, there is an over representation of the DSD athletes in world and continental championship finals. So if I'm not wrong, it says about 50 to 60 athletes are making the world and continental championship finals. So that representation of the number of DSD athletes making it there is in itself alarming, because then that does not adequately represent how these people are distributed as a global, in the population sense. So say you would have about 1 in 500 or 1 in 1,000 person who is DSD, but seeing so many athletes who are making championship finals is definitely alarming. And that's where protection of female sport becomes important. And as you would have heard, there are a lot of people would say, oh, Michael Phelps had an advantage, he had certain physical traits which helped him win that many medals. But what they don't see is that is happening in a certain category. That is not so. Michael Phelps has all of these physical attributes which uh, make him, wonderful in, like, the way he swims, the way his body is able to clear lactate and all of those things. But is that he still is competing within the category of the male sport. So yes, as we in sport we do celebrate these outstanding traits, but that does not mean that these traits go outside of that category. So say we have somebody who's a tall basketball player, great, but he's still playing in that particular category. We have a sprinter who probably has more fast twitch muscle fibers in his body, great, we celebrate that, but we don't celebrate infringement of categories as such. And whether a third category would be feasible or not has a lot to do with, like, even the stakeholders, and whether it would be feasible to have that category and then have subcategories in those categories. So I think that would be uh, there'd be a lot of minds to put into that, whether we would require that or not.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Vakharia. There are not too many national record holders like you who become gold medalists in sports medicine as well, and who will stick their necks out and have such difficult conversations. I truly appreciate the time and the effort that you've put in to share whatever you have known about, whatever you've read, and whatever you've researched about the SRY test and how it can actually help sport remain a level playing field for female athletes. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.